Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar brought to you by NERC, the Northeast Recycling Council, about material reuse, online materials exchange, the challenges and viability and reach. The webinar titled The Online Materials Exchange will explore the role of online materials exchange in today's economy, and it will delve into the challenges these platforms face, such as logistics, trust, and scalability, while also examining their potential viability and their impact. I'm Mariani Medeiros. I'm the Senior Project Manager at NERC. And before we get started, I would like to review some housekeeping details. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. A recording of the webinar and a copy of the presentations of our speakers will be available on the NERC website, and you will receive an email with a link. Please use the chat to ask any questions for the presenters, which we will get to once everyone is finished speaking. So today we have three great presenters here for our webinar, which is Daniel Kitzer. He's the Director of Sustainability at Ripley. James Rutten, co-founder and CEO at iWasteNot, and Norm Rutten, the co-founder and president at iWasteNot. So I'll pass it off to our moderator, Heather Trim. She's the Executive Director at Zero Waste Washington. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm zooming in from Seattle. Executive Director of Zero Waste Washington. I'm your moderator today. For those of you who are new today, these are a set of quarterly forums that we are doing where we're trying to encourage discussion and building a body of people who are having a conversation across the United States to help advance the issue of reuse of durable items and salvage, et cetera. So I'm very pleased to moderate today. We're going to have two presentations, and then after that, we will have a pretty extensive Q&A. And I will encourage you to actually raise your hand at that point as well, because we really do want to make this a dialogue and have people introduce themselves as they ask their question. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel, and thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Let me do a little screen share action here. Let's see. All right, that should be on. Somebody give me a thumbs up that all of this looks
That is looking great. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you to the team for the invite to speak today. Thank you for everybody that's logged on to join us. So I'm Daniel, our Director of Sustainability at Ripley. I am going to give just a brief introduction to our company and our philosophy and how we think about some of these challenges and opportunities. I'll talk a little bit about kind of where we are today in our journey. I'll talk a little bit about how we measure impact, and then a very kind of high-level overview of some barriers and opportunities that we see in the broader reuse marketplace. So a little bit about us. So to kind of ground to ground all of us in kind of our philosophy and our way of thinking here. So we are a circular economy company. That means that we try to build solutions around these three principles. All of you all that do work in this space know these three principles as well as I do, and the importance of eliminating waste and pollution, circulating products and materials at their highest and best use, doing so in a way that's regenerative to nature. But something that we also like to kind of bring into the fold is this bonus fourth principle, which is really beginning to think about how we redefine a meaningful life with less consumption. And also thinking about what that fourth principle means when we think about business success and defining how businesses operate in this new way of thinking. So I just want everyone to have that fourth principle kind of in the back of their mind as we go through this, because at the end of the day, pumping the brakes on our excessive consumption is something that really needs to be a part of the conversation. So a little bit about Reaply. So we've been at this since 2016. Our mission is to build a community where every workplace resource finds its next best use. And if we unpack that mission a little bit and kind of what that means, so building a community, this means engaging lots and lots of different people, lots and lots of different organizations in kind of new and meaningful ways. So across our technology platform, we have a very, very significant user base representing lots and lots of different types of businesses and organizations. We also get to work with some really amazing partners along the way that represent small businesses, nonprofits, remanufacturers, building material salvage organizations, kind of all those often hidden pieces of the circular economy. We get to link all of those together across our broader reuse community. When we talk about every workplace resource, we're talking about building a digital record for the things that surround us every day, and through our history in this space and the work that we do, we've been able to build a digital record of a lot of stuff. So we've pretty well crossed the 1 million assets milestone when we think about the amount of things that exist on our platforms, and those things represent a lot of different things, but one of those representations is a significant amount of money and a significant amount of value, and so we like to kind of highlight that. But when we talk about this journey of things to their next best use, that's really where it comes down to putting big reuse numbers up on the scoreboard. We had a pretty good year last year, and we're able to move quite a bit of material, and quite a bit of material representing quite a lot of carbon. And I'll talk a little bit more about kind of what that means and how we think about embodied carbon and its relationship to reuse in a second. But I wanted to kind of highlight that right here at the beginning. So we know that we're operating in a relatively new and novel business environment today. Businesses are rapidly changing shape, they're rapidly changing size, and we really see a need and an opportunity to create technology that helps the biggest businesses in the world and the smallest businesses in the world rethink what they buy and rethink how they manage resources that they own. So our kind of core tenets are helping organizations use what they already have. When they're done using what they already have, to sell or donate the things that they no longer need, and to do that in a way that creates impact in their community instead of filling up landfills and dragging our environment down. So again, really simple to understand our technology solutions. We want to help organizations know what they have. By knowing what they have, we want to help them use what they have, and then finally drive impact with the things that they no longer need. A little overview of our technology. So we operate a couple of different kind of components of our technology platform, and then we also combine that with some services when necessary. One of those platforms is really optimized around inventory management. So that first piece of knowing what you have, we have lots of interesting tools that help businesses create this digital record of the stuff that they already own. That same digital record, that inventory, then feeds into our Circulate platform that helps those same materials either be more optimally reused inside of the enterprise organization, or connected to the broader marketplace. And that really gets into planning for and understanding and optimizing for the next life of things, and extending the life of assets, whether that's being reused inside of a company or being reused externally into the community across different partner organizations. So how we kind of build this broader marketplace gets into more of the kind of programmatic side of Reaply and what we do and how we work. We have a Circular Cities initiative that's been launching various marketplace-like programs in different cities across the U.S. Some of those cities are represented by folks on the call today, which is super, super cool. I know some of you all participate in these programs as well. But the idea behind all of this is that we want to see Reaply being utilized to connect dots between businesses and organizations to help enable the sharing of resources across the broader community. We really like cities as a geographic focus because it's kind of a nice sweet spot of having a high enough volume of businesses and materials to create a vibrant marketplace, but not moving materials so far that we end up eclipsing the environmental or economic benefits of reuse. So cities are a really, really nice area to operate. But, as I mentioned, at the end of the day, it's all about connecting dots. We know, as well as I'm sure everybody on the call here knows, the complexity in doing this work and the complexity involved with circular ecosystems. We think technology can help, and that's really kind of what we build and what we design here is technology that helps connect these dots. So whether we're talking about manufacturers that are putting new product into the marketplace that want to see that product being used more responsibly or being used longer, or the first owners that are buying that material, or the second owners, or the third owners, or the service providers that stuff might have to bounce out to get freshened up before it goes back into the marketplace. So all of this involves a lot of information flowing back and forth, and we've built a lot of our tools to help facilitate that. So where we are today, so I mentioned some of our city projects that we have going on. So this is one example of that, and one of our longest running city projects in the Bay Area. We initially launched this in 2021 in partnership with the city of San Francisco and the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance. And since then, we've had some enterprise support and funding to continue to grow and scale this project. But this project has a very heavy focus on built environment and building materials and building products. Some of our other projects have different material focuses, but this one is firmly within that space. Lots of things representing lots of different types of building products, and some decent transactions so far, but we're really kind of just getting started with this, but also kind of intersecting in some ways with that broader city work. We also do work directly with the city of San Francisco. So we've been operating a program focused on reuse of city surplus materials across city departments. And I think these two examples side by side really illustrates a capability of Reaply to be able to either optimize for reuse inside of the organization or reuse externally across the community. Similarly, we have another project that's also been very long running in the state of Ohio, working with the Ohio EPA. This is the Ohio Materials Marketplace, which connects businesses all across the state. This project has a little more of a manufacturing and industrial focus to it. So we work with a lot of industrial byproducts, a lot of industrial surplus materials. But again, all of these businesses are on Reaply, making information available about what they have, and Reaply helps facilitate connecting of the dots. But this example that's on the screen, I think, is a really cool story that kind of showcases how this project can be utilized. So we worked with the Cleveland Guardians as they were making some changes at the stadium, and were able to connect a whole bunch of material to the Ohio Materials Marketplace and move a whole lot of stuff to some nonprofits. So this was a cool story. It's also kind of cool to say that we got to work with the Cleveland Guardians on something. So we always love telling that. We work with lots of different types of industries. This is another case study from one of our healthcare clients. We've been working with Alina here for quite some time now to reuse like surgical instruments and other healthcare related items across various Alina facilities and locations. Lots and lots of value being recaptured there through reuse, and lots of items moving across different entities. We do some work down here in Texas, where I call home, with the city of San Antonio. They're doing some really, really amazing work across the city, and we work with them in a similar way to what I described with the city of San Francisco, where we're facilitating reuse inside of the city, but we're also working with some of their programming to help build the broader reuse ecosystem across San Antonio. They have a super cool project called the Material Innovation Center that's like a collection point and a hub for building materials and building products that are then made available to contractors in the city. So super cool project. We love working with them and all the good work that they're doing down there. And then another example from one of our customers in Chicago. We also have a Chicagoland reuse marketplace that, as I described before, kind of helps facilitate more broader community interactions. So going back to kind of thinking, to talking about some of our reporting and how we track things. So anything that moves on Reaply gets tracked and reported on. We provide a full suite of metrics on platform, looking at the sustainability impact, looking at financial performance, looking at program engagement metrics, all of the basics that you would think about around like weight diverted and recaptured, around value, all of that's covered. Something that's kind of unique to us is embodied carbon reporting. So we have a methodology that we've developed to look at the embodied carbon of materials and to calculate the embodied carbon that's being avoided because we're reusing items and hopefully displacing the manufacturing of a new product. This covers a good majority of categories on Reaply, and is a really nice way of showing the carbon impact that comes along with reuse. For a lot of companies that we work with, this is super important because they're trying to wrap their heads around how they report against their Scope 3 emissions. Reuse and circularity hits really well at a couple of Scope 3 categories. The biggest ones being number 1 and number 2 around purchase goods and services. Again, as we're facilitating more reuse of stuff that companies already own and stuff that's already manufactured, we're hoping that we can create reductions in the amount of purchase goods and services over time at organizations. So some quick kind of barriers and opportunities before I hand this off that we see across our marketplaces. So I like to kind of break this up into thinking about small rocks that are easily carried uphill, and then big boulders that take a little extra work to push up the mountain. Small rocks, the quick wins that we see across all of our projects. When we think about the types of items that are being exchanged, reuse of surplus materials or decommissioned assets that are coming out of the space that are in good, like readily, easily reusable condition. Those things move really, really well on our marketplaces. Same thing about any types of transactions involving community impact. Reuse donations, donations to small businesses. Those are relatively small rocks for us as well, where we see a lot of success. And then for, speaking from the perspective of a business, using tools and resources like Reaply to kind of find, sell, donate durable goods is also, where we see a decent amount of success. Zooming in on that first bullet, talking about surplus products, this is from some of our work related to building materials and building products, but every project has surplus material that was over ordered, that was rejected for one reason or another. Maybe it was installation scrap. This is all really like low-hanging fruit materials that's relatively easy to get into a reuse scenario. But some of the big boulders that we recognize are going to take a little more time and energy and effort to push up this mountain. Reuse of reclaimed materials. So when we're talking about materials that are deconstructed from a project, that comes with a whole lot of question marks around it, from how they're deconstructed to the materials themselves, to certifications, warranty, all of those like kind of big barriers related to reclaimed materials. We see those and feel those across our projects too. Developing good specs, getting reuse written into RFPs, developing certifications for materials. This is a big boulder that I know a lot of folks on the call here today are working on, but it's always going to be, a part of that kind of larger set of challenges that we have to get past. Logistics, aggregation, storage, another set of challenges that we see across all of our projects. There are stories of wins on this. There are really good organizations and businesses that are working in this space. But I would say this is a big boulder that's common to all of our projects. So I wouldn't say that any of these necessarily are deal breakers to doing this work and are deal breakers to being successful in this work. But I think recognizing that these are challenges and finding good people to work on these challenges with is really what it's going to take for us to move the ball forward. And for us here, it's all about kind of centering back on our core tenets, right? Like we believe, and I think everybody on the call here probably believes certain parts of this, that reuse really should be the tip of the spear when we talk about climate action in the built environment, but also across other industries. We think that reuse can have a huge impact on the embodied carbon impact of buildings and operations. And we also think that there's lots and lots of opportunities to just start small. Whether it's within an organization or a room within an organization, or whether we're specializing with a single product type. Coming from somebody who's spent a decent amount of time within startups, taking this iterative approach of learning what works, learning what fails, being comfortable with failure, but always kind of iterating and then scaling when we know we have something that happens that happens to find success. This is how we approach problem solving at Reaply, and I think this is how the industry as a whole can approach kind of problem solving and building in this space as well. So last thing I'll show, just to recap everything that I talked about, we have reuse inside of enterprise organizations, we have reuse outside of enterprise organizations, and then we have a broader set of work to build the reuse ecosystem across the region. These are things that we really love working on here at Reaply, and would really love to work on with all of you here. So that's what I've got. Thank you for listening. I think we'll probably do questions at the end of all of this.
We will, yes.
Appreciate y'all listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And if you can hold off not answering questions in chat, because we want to do it verbally at the end. That was great. Thank you. So now Norm and James Rutan are going to share the presentation. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm just going to start by setting up the share screen here.
Okay, it's coming in.
Yeah, and I just want to thank everyone for coming today, and thank NERC for the opportunity to present, talk about some of these things. So I guess the big question is, how did we get here? We've been doing this for about 20 years, so it sometimes feels a little like that. Um, but I'll just start by letting you know about iWaste now a little bit. We are a family-based business. We sometimes joke that we could have become a sports team because there's so many of us working with the company, but instead we started an internet company. And we are mission driven. My parents grew up in rural areas, and you know, the culture there is that nothing is wasted. And Norm worked in Canadian National Parks for many years. And our family actually was lucky enough to grow up in some of those national parks, the kids. So we're dedicated to environmental conservation and service to others. And we produce many systems, but the overall impact of what we're trying to do is to bring that Amazon level tools and technology to the circular economy. We produce products like our recap surplus inventory and management system, our Recyclopedia education and outreach system, and a variety of different kinds of materials exchanges for communities.
Hey, James, you're a little bit choppy. I wonder if you turn off your video and make it a little bit better.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
And with that, I'll let Norm speak.
Norm, we can't hear you. You might have your you might be on mute.
Okay, is that working now?
Now we can hear you. Thanks so much. Perfect.
Great. So James asked me to give a brief history of our company. I retired from National Parks as a superintendent in 2003, and I was helping out with the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve for a while. And I saw a little item in the paper about some college kids who'd started up BrockvilleReuses.com. And it intrigued me because I've thought for a long time that we wasted a lot of stuff that could be reused, but there wasn't a very good mechanism for getting that stuff back into reuse. So I contacted college students who were trying to make this program work, and they were running out of money and running out of energy, and having just got out of university, they didn't have jobs. So they were trying this, but they were about ready to give up, and they asked me if I would help them. So at first I said, no, I'm too busy because I'm on the land trust and I do Biosphere Reserve, and I'm on the Algonquin to Adirondack Conservation Association board, and I'm too busy. But they said, if you come back in 6 months, if we ask you again. And I said, well, go ahead and ask me again in 6 months. So to make a long story short, they asked. I said the second time, yeah, I'll help you out. And then they had to leave to go get real jobs. So I took over iWaste, not just BrockvilleReuses.com. We own the domain name reuses.com. And I eventually bought the company from them for a very small amount of money. In the meantime, they had sold a copy of their material exchange software to King County, Washington, and King County liked it because it tracked and reported. So that was great. And then the next thing that happened is Washington State Department of Environmental Conservation called me and said, could you do a reusable building materials exchange for us? Said, yes, we could. And they eventually signed up 17 counties, and we launched toogoodtotoss.com, number 2 good, number 2 toss.com. And the last county to use that just stopped using it this year. So we've had 21 years of customers coming back to us. They had a problem with our software. At that time, you didn't put third-party software on your government servers. So we offered that we would host it as part of the deal. And also, we did it by subscription. So year 1, year 2. So we were one of the early software as a service by subscription businesses in North America. So it wasn't very long that system, by the way, got up to about 40,000 registered users and about 70,000 hits coming in a day. Just hammered our servers. And we learned very quickly how to keep our servers online and so on. Next thing that happened was Madison, Wisconsin called and said, can we get on this system? And we said yes, but then Washington State didn't want to give their Too Good to Toss name away. So Madison came up with their Madison Stuff Exchange. So we just got busy doing that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, the province of Alberta called and said, we've got a Foothills Mall here in Calgary, and we've got about 300 companies, and we would like a system to help them exchange with each other. That was a really good system. We ran that for about 4 or 5 years for them. And unfortunately, the director of the Clean Calgary organization decided to run for Parliament as a candidate in the federal election, and she lost. And at the same time, she lost her contract with the city because she was now being seen as political. So we lost that system, even though it was really successful. And I think we saved hundreds of thousands of dollars for those organizations in Calgary. So we just kept on going, but the recession came along. Next thing you know, we're losing a customer or two. And then along came Kijiji in Canada, which was like Facebook Marketplace, but on its own software. And then along came Facebook Marketplace, and it kind of took the wind out of our sails. So we coasted for from about 2012, we started to coast. By about 2016, 2018, we said, well, times have changed, there's more interest in reuse. Climate change is biting really hard. All of a sudden, there are sustainability managers in all kinds of organizations. Do we want to give this another go, or do we sell the company and get out of the business? And so we decided that we would give it another go and learn from what we had done over the past 15, 16 years. So we pivoted over to dealing with organizations exclusively, almost exclusively. We still have a few contracts. We have one with Surrey, BC for residential materials exchange, but we're very heavily into dealing with organizations now. And as I said, the world has changed. And James is going to give you a walk through some of the history of the company in a little bit more detail, and then some recommendations and some challenges and so on. And then I'll come back in and do a wrap up. So over to you, James.
Thanks, Norm. So we divide the history of our company in about 3 periods. The first, as Norm mentioned, 2004 to 2010 was a period of growth, experimentation, and exploration for us. And we divide those periods, as I said, into 3, the startup, rebuild, and restartup periods of our company history. As Norm mentioned, early on, we started with the Too Good to Toss system. This commenced in 2004 as a 4-county partnership along with the Washington State Department of Ecology. And it's a pretty simple concept. One person's trash is another person's treasure. And, just I have a bike I don't need, I could landfill it or I could give it to my neighbor. So it's sort of along the lines of the free cycle that you might remember type of exchange, but with much better software. And in fact, we did talk with Darren Beal, the free cycle founder at the time, about partnering, but it didn't come through. So I'm just going to remind you that this is before iPhones, before all sorts of modern internet technology. And these systems were very popular and were considered to be very sophisticated and easy to use at the time. As Norm mentioned, we added Dane County and Madison. And we began learning from the experience we were getting providing these systems to various clients. We added things like listing approvals so that folks could, our clients could screen for, weird listings and that sort of thing. Surveys, how did you hear about the system? Gap analysis. And Many said that it was absolutely infeasible to capture data from this, but we began collecting weights and reporting on this. The weights gave us a diversion total. Since our start, we've diverted hundreds of thousands of pounds of material. And it also allowed us to calculate the avoided cost to pick up the item or material from curbside, say, and pay to tip it and truck it. And so we were able to show cost savings from this metric, which displayed a really good ROI for the cost of the systems, which we knew always had to be affordable in order for these things to work well. And once the folks started to see the cost savings, it really took off for us. And for users, the central concept is in economics, it's called transaction costs, reduce transaction costs, and specifically reduce search and information costs. So these systems were early on popular. Norm mentioned the Calgary Materials Exchange. This was another one of our very early sites. And this was an early eco-industrial byproduct synergy network in the Calgary, Alberta area, creating links between companies in a foothills industrial park. And it looks very similar to other materials exchanges, but this was our first hint that some other kinds of systems might also work, because we developed a sophisticated backend for them, essentially to manage material flows in a more active way and not so passively. So it's not only an exchange, but a materials management system that Clean Calgary used to help companies figure out how to deal with surplus items and materials, either through reuse or recycling or various ways. And it was the start of us. Norm referred to the Too Good to Toss system as a residential exchange. That's what we came to term those. These we termed industrials. And through this period, we saw pretty rapid growth. Too Good to Toss expanded to eventually reach 17 counties. And as Norm mentioned, 60,000 daily users as of 2005. Things seem to really be going well for us. Internet was kind of a new thing for a lot of people, and everyone was excited to try these new things. We saw rapid growth, adding many exchanges over the next little while, places like Newton, Massachusetts, and Boulder, Colorado. And at that time, we added a Recyclopedia feature, which is an outreach and guidance system. It started as a way to just help my mother-in-law figure out what to put in what bin and where to take hazardous waste and that kind of thing. Because I was trying to help her out, and she was saying, well, why can't I put light bulbs in the glass recycling bin and things like that? So I wanted to help provide a tool that gave really good, accurate answers. So we added that to the system. We continued also to add more industrial systems, including Pennsylvania Material Trader and others. And our growth was continuing. We were experimenting with things like organics exchanges covering food, biomass, agricultural. We put a system into Puerto Rico, which was bilingual. And as we continued, we hit the point where the 2008 financial crisis hit and the subsequent recession, and we saw a bit of a slowdown. We were still launching sites like New York Waste Match and the Chicago Soil and Rubble Exchange, but our clients were beginning to see competition from Craigslist and eBay, and those residential exchanges, which had been our backbone, were starting to fall away. So we took that opportunity to reorient and rebuild. Our code base had become very large as we added features and customized things, which made it kind of difficult to upgrade. But the internet was changing, and the tools and technologies meant that we had to take that time and rebuild in order to achieve our version 5 software. During this period, we added the reusewood.org site in association with the Building Materials Reuse Association, and supported by the American and Canadian Wood Councils. This site has proved to be very popular and is an excellent resource for those in the construction deconstruction area. Around the end of this time, we launched our main Recyclopedia Delaware site, and it has served them well since then. And we were planning and designing a donation platform for the Donate New York City website. University of Manitoba, the reshop marks the first release of our V5 system software. The new system was API based, so we were able to embed it right into the university's website and add a mobile-friendly responsive design and allow single sign-on. We continued to work with Delaware on their Recyclopedia. And as of 2020, we were really pivoting strongly. We used our experience to begin redesigning our product line into very specific niches. So we have the recap inventory platform. We have an exchange platform. We have the Recyclopedia guidance platform, which also powers reuse wood. And these and a few coming products are modular and they can be combined. The central paradigm of our shift is away from what I would call exchange focus and towards what we see as the surplus chain. And we think that looking at that much larger surplus chain can unlock an awful lot more reuse than straightforward exchange between individuals or organizations. The supply chain is very well developed. It's efficient. It has many tools. And we need to do the same for the surplus chain, to develop that chain and feed it back into the supply chain. And tools to manage that are in development by us and others. We launched our Recyclopedia version 2 platform recently to great success in Delaware. And as of November 2023, we deployed our first new recap system, the surplus management system at California State University in Sacramento. They branded as Hornet Surplus. 6 months later, they're reporting $150,000 in 6 months through avoided purchase and disposal costs, which marks a 30 times cost return. That is a 3,000% annual ROI. It is important to note that we are also seeing substantial recapture of items and diversion from landfill. But I think the argument is easily made that we need to not only satisfy sustainability goals, but to also make the argument that this is an economically sustainable way forward. And we're really pleased to be adding new schools in California in the next few months. So we thought we'd give a sense of some of the trends that we see. So obviously, our co-presenter, Daniel and Ripley, are technically a competitor of ours, but we don't really see it that way because they're trying to achieve the same goals as we are. And our biggest competitor, we think, is do nothing or keep doing the same old thing. And we really need to continue to make the arguments that this change is not only for the better, but is a sustainable way forward in many respects. Some of the challenges that we see is that there is institutional resistance due to the incentive structures baked into the current way of doing things. And this is slow to change, although it may be something we can work around. But we definitely see an awful lot of opportunities to learn and develop in the new environment that we're seeing, with sustainability becoming so much more of a force to be reckoned with in our modern day society. And we want to just continue to listen and innovate and move forward. And the challenges and opportunities that we're seeing, reuse is, as I mentioned, becoming more of a need to have than a nice to have. When we first started, the focus was probably pretty heavily on recycling, with reuse being like, yeah, that'd be great. But now we're starting to see that it's really understood to be an imperative because recycling can only get us so far. And with the advent of Scope 3 and ESG pressures, on organizations and governments, that's just going to continue to be much more important. We think that the focus on data has increased, measuring things by data and understanding how to move forward by data. And we're continuing to expand the types of data that we collect and report on. We also think that we will see less generic systems and more niche applications designed to work in a specific context. And my personal prediction is that we will see the rise of repair and refurbish as reuse modes or enablers in the near future. I'll let Norm wrap up.
Okay, I think my mute is off.
You're good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay, good. If you want to put my video on, go ahead. I'm not sure. Let's see. Yeah, there, I think I've got it. So as James said, one of the things we pride ourselves on is learning and listening. We've had 21 years of experience at doing that. James was telling me he was talking to one of our old customers in Washington State a day or two ago, and we were discussing some of the systemic barriers that some universities and colleges have. And the fellow he was talking to mentioned a couple of ideas to him. And so James and I were talking about that before this conference website or webinar, and said, yeah, maybe that would work. So I think we're still evolving the sustainable material management and the reduce reuse portion of it. Recycling is more mature, but there's still lots to do and lots of scope for improving. One of the things that's helped us is software is nowadays much better, much easier to build, more powerful. So maybe a little bit less secure than it was in the early days. There weren't so many scammers around, but that's helped us. We can get better software out the door more quickly, and I think that's going to be important for the evolution of systems. One thing as James said, we don't think one size of material exchange fits everyone. New York City is not Idaho. MIT is not McAllister. University, residential, commercial is not construction and demolition. And one of the things that we're open to doing is working within those sectors to tailor our solution to the issues that are unique to those sectors. James mentioned some barriers and disincentives. We've got an old system that's been around for a century. I'll give you one example of one. We try to work with some universities, and we found out that some universities fund their surplus property managers from the sale of items that they sell out the door. We think reuse is a really, within the organization, is a much better option and saves them a lot more money in avoided purchasing costs. And it's much easier to do within an organization than between organizations. But the problem is the rules are still there, and until they change that system and say that the surplus property manager gets funded like everybody else and doesn't have to get his paycheck from selling stuff out the door, which is a perverse incentive for them, then it will continue. So that's actually what James was talking with the fellow from Washington State this morning about. James mentioned that we work on a digital circular economy. We don't just do materials exchanges. We want to help build the tools for sustainable materials management for organizations. So, and we have to place a materials exchange or an inventory system within that context. We have seen a huge change in the drivers For example, in the old days, it was all economic and reuse was a nice to have. And nobody worried too much about embodied carbon. And now it's sustainability managers and circular economy and waste avoidance as a to help with the climate crisis. So our customers have changed. In the old days, it was recycling managers. Nowadays, it's sustainability managers and surplus property managers. But budgets are still a concern. It's not as if all of these organizations have money to burn. They don't. Colleges and universities for example, one of our clients are under significant economic pressure as their enrollment drops. So we have deliberately kept our prices low so that we can sign up customers and grow our system. And we expect to continue to do that. Software as a service can be a very profitable service if you get a customer and they stay with you for a long time. For example, we still have Surrey Reuses as a customer from 2021, and every year they send us a check and we keep providing them a service. So we have almost 0% churn if we can in customers if we can produce a very good product. And as I said, everything's evolving and everything's changing, and we expect it to continue to change, and we'll change with it. That's it for me. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate James and Norman. So right now we're going to do a Q&A, and we want to have people actually raise your hand and speak and introduce yourself as you do that. So the first question we have that came in was from S. Cannon. Can you raise your hand and show your video and introduce yourself? After that, we'll have material reuse guide. S. Cannon? Okay, material reuse guide.
This is
Oh,
Sandra
great.
Cannon.
Oh, great. Thanks, Sandra. Go ahead. Would you like to ask your question and introduce yourself as
I
well?
work with the U.S. Department of Energy consultant, and I'm sorry, I think I'm having connection problems because I'm only hearing half the conversation.
Yes, we are not catching you. We caught that you are a contractor for the U.S. DOE. Well, her question was, I'll go ahead and say, what calculator are you using for, this is for Ripley, but I think this is a good question for both of you, to quantify embedded carbon?
Yes. So just to kind of show this real quick, here's a slide to help paint this visual. So the way that we look at embodied carbon and calculating embodied carbon avoided through reuse follows the idea that if we're reusing a material, hopefully the reuse of that material is displacing the purchase and the production of a new product. So and that's called the displacement of that purchase. So this aligns with a few interesting movements in the industry, particularly in the built environment. This quote here is from the federal government's facilities building standards, the P100, very extensive document, but they just put this in the most recent revision saying a reuse, salvage, reclaim, repair, refurbished, or remanufactured material is a material with substantially lower embodied greenhouse gas emissions if used to displace a new material. So, so the way that we calculate that is we have a database of embodied carbon emissions factors that are associated with different categories of products on Ripley. Those emissions factors are in kilograms of CO2 equivalent per kilogram. We take that factor, multiply it by the weight of an item on Ripley and the quantity of an item. And that's the formula that spits out estimated embodied carbon avoided. I realize with this and recognize with this that we are making some fairly lofty assumptions, right? Starting with the assumption that everything that's reused on Reaply is displacing a new product purchase. We don't necessarily know that to be true. But then the assumption taking that one step further that by displacing a new product purchase, we're completely displacing the production of a new product. We're probably not quite there yet if we're just being honest and realistic, right? It's going to take a whole lot of reuse at a whole lot of organizations for us to slow down the amount of new product that's being produced. But that's the eventual end goal of where we're hoping to get with this. So happy to elaborate more on how we come up with embodied carbon emissions factors and things like that separately. But this is just kind of at a very high level how we look at this.
Okay, great, thank you. And James and Norm, do you all do an embedded carbon calculation with your work?
We used to do carbon calculations for some of our systems, but I've got to say that calculation, as Daniel noted, I think, is incredibly tricky because there are so many potential factors coming into play. And it's sort of a best guess at best. So we discontinued providing calculations around GHGs. It was almost impossible to get the kind of information that would have made them reasonably accurate. I mean, you're dealing with composite materials of unknown specific origin often. We didn't expect to be able to sell carbon offsets, but having a number that was reasonably accurate rather than merely aspirational and representational seemed like a better step to us. So our expectation is to try to work on that over the next little while. With one possibility being that we're seeing that companies are beginning to publish data on the embodied carbon in their products, and we may be able to use that as a way of looking at that problem.
Okay, great. And Daniel, if you can refrain from typing your answer and go ahead and say verbally. So if you don't mind answering Sandra's follow-up, she said, what is your source for your embedded carbon factor?
Yeah, so we use a mixture of LCA data that has been developed with some partners of ours for products that don't have readily available EPD information. Where there is readily available EPD data on products, and speaking more to like the building product space, we use aggregated and averaged information from those EPD sources. So it's a variety of different different sources to kind of piece it all together, recognizing that we have thousands of product categories on Reaply, but that helps us kind of get to the best coverage. I will say that there is some really exciting work being done in the industry right now, including by some folks joining us here on the call today to develop EPDs for salvaged and reused materials. This is being supported and funded through IRA funding from US EPA and a few other sources. That's going to be a game changer for people trying to get closer to the pin with quantifying these numbers. And I'm super excited to see that happen. So long term, all methodologies are leading in that direction. What we have now is kind of a stopgap until the industry reaches that point of maturity where that data is more reliable and more readily available.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
I would agree with Daniel there. And just to say the characterization of building materials is way ahead of a lot of other stuff.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. And that was a very interesting discussion. Material reuse guy, do you want to turn on your camera and introduce yourself?
Hi, this is Brad Guy. I'm an architect. And I think Daniel and the iWasteNet guys definitely at least got into the question I had about weighted, not to be semantic about it, but it's a little difficult to distinguish that word. We might talk about reduced burdens, So I don't think I need to say more, but I guess I would add a comment. It seems generally that the more, quote, luxurious something is, so there are a lot of things that don't avoid the purchase of anything. I don't think I use a bad example. A Tiffany bag probably avoids the purchase of some other bag, but not completely. Um, maybe 10%. The other 90% is pure desire. So my other question had to do with, and I'll just scroll down and read my question. Oh, the distinction, and I know I'm not going to get a straight answer, but I just want to throw it out for anyone. When we talk about surplus, of course, a lot of material that's not used is potentially waste, and it's a real gray area. So when you want to talk about the benefit of reusing something, where do you draw the line between it didn't actually get used at all, so it wouldn't really be appropriate to say it was reused. And in fact, it was reused, so then there's legitimate extension of life that may not have occurred. Where's your boundary?
Dan, you want to take the first stab?
Yeah, no, and hi Brad, good to see you. Yeah, that I think it's a really kind of interesting, I don't know, philosophical question in some ways of how we draw that line.
Can I interrupt? It's not at all philosophical, Daniel, because for the purposes of doing these calculations, we in fact do have to draw a line.
Totally, yeah.
Because the claim of reduced or avoided is a literal mass quantity calculation.
Yes.
It's not a philosophical question.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you on that. I think like for us and how we look at that, it really comes down to what is the impact that that act of either calling it reuse to simplify things, but the act of bringing something that's not being utilized today or not being utilized to its fullest extent today into the market, and whether or not the action of doing that has a quantifiable, measurable impact on somebody not doing something else as a result. In our thinking, not purchasing something new as a result. So we don't necessarily draw the distinction in our work around market building between a product that was never utilized at all versus a product that was utilized multiple times before, because for us the action of bringing that thing back into use and circulation and displacing something new being brought in instead is really what matters for our work.
Okay, great. So next we have Leanne, and then after that, Kay Frost. Leanne, are you able to open up your? Yep, there you go. Great.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I also invite everyone else to raise your hand as well. So don't be shy.
I am using a new computer. The question I have, and I think some
Do you mind introducing
Oh,
yourself?
yes,
Yeah.
no, I am Leanne. I am with Southern Waste Information Exchange in Tallahassee, Florida. We primarily deal with industrial level exchange information. We run the wastemap.com website and the wasteexchange.com websites. My question is, we've been thinking about updating these websites, and I don't know, I'm getting the impression that I Waste Not actually creates exchange websites for other people, for other partners, but what is Reaply doing? If we were to consider restructuring our exchange website or restructuring the functionality that it has, what software or software building services are these companies using to accomplish these online exchange sites. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So our approach kind of under the hood to providing software for these programs. So everything for us exists on a single Reaply platform. And that platform does a very good job at showing a user, an end user, exactly what they want to see, either based on where they are or based on how they do business and are participating in this broader circular economy. So when I say we have a New York City reuse marketplace and we have a Bay Area reuse marketplace on opposite sides of the country, unless an organization in the Bay Area wants to see things in New York for some reason, their typical configuration on Reaply is to just see things that are in their region and in their area. So that allows them to have a little extra optionality if for some reason they want it, but allows us to build programs that are region specific or objective specific, depending on what the owner and sponsor of that program wants to accomplish.
So you're building your own platforms for these people to use, or you've got an IT group or company that's doing that with you.
Yes, so Reaply is homegrown. We own and operate and manage and build our own software platform for this.
Okay, thank you.
And James, do you all do the other where you can go in and help someone with their system?
Yeah, we typically will provide our platform to clients. It is something like Reaply in that the platform is actually a single instance multi-tenant platform, but it is branded and operated by the client.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So the next person is Kay Frost, and you have 2 questions. Kay Frost, are you able to unmute yourself? Well, while we're waiting for Kay Frost, I wish I knew Kay Frost.
I did want to comment on a previous question, which is, how do you distinguish between end of life, what would have happened? And that is a complication that we saw very early on. We were talking about the Calgary materials management system that we built, and we developed this concept called pipelines. Where was the thing going to go? Was it going to be recycled, reused, disposed of? And that complicates things again and makes it really difficult, as I mentioned, to get an accurate sense of what the avoided GHG emissions would be. If something would have been recycled, that doesn't mean it would have been disposed of. And it's difficult to know in advance. But I think we know that we're doing well in those metrics by promoting and sustaining reuse. And that's why we're often focused as much as anything on the economic benefits that we're able to provide, because those are quite quantifiable. And, for example, in Sacramento, they have a catalog that they purchase new items from. And so they know what the value of having to buy something new would be because it's laid out in a catalog. And by connecting with procurement and asking folks to check their surplus before they're allowed to buy something new, they reported like an instant jump, 17% increase in reuse. So I understand that we do want to get to the GHG emissions, but I think that we're still seeing good value and ways of measuring the impact.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and read Kay Frost's questions. The first one is, how do your services align with QPA green purchases? And the second is, how do you get city or municipality buy-in, especially with regard to their bid systems? Let's see, Daniel, you want to go first?
Yes, I'm not familiar with QPA green purchases, but if this is speaking more to kind of green sustainable purchasing policies, I think in general at large organizations, Reaply aligns really well with that. A lot of our enterprise customers that do have, or a lot of our government customers too, that have sustainable purchasing policies in place, have a section in there that says, check Reaply to see if something is available before you purchase anything else. And that's really good kind of guidance to build into those standards if a program like Reaply is available within that organization. So that's how we kind of loosely integrate with those types of mechanisms.
And the second question was about the bid systems for the cities. Do you see that question? Or how about this? Norman, James, why don't you go next, and then Dan, you can answer the second question.
Yeah, I'm
Sure,
not familiar with QPAI either. Please go ahead, Norm.
We've been involved in lots of bid systems with lots of municipalities. I don't know generically if there is a bidding system that is common to all municipalities. Generally, what we have to do is, well, first of all, we try to keep our prices below the level that bids are required. And we can often do that, especially with services like the Encyclopedia, but often also with some material exchanges for smaller municipalities. But when we do bid, we simply go and register ourselves I did with Connecticut the other day, and I've done it with Maryland. I've done it with various municipalities, and then we respond to whatever bids come out. And typically, I'm the one who, James and I sit there and work out how we respond to the bid. So, I mean, each one is quite different. What we did Chicago, and it was a real nightmare when we did it with the city of Chicago in terms of the amount of work required. That's what we do. I don't know if I've answered the question, but that's the best I can do, I think.
No, you did. Daniel, got an answer for that?
Yeah. So speaking specifically to bid language for construction projects that might be municipality owned, I'm gonna give a very, very strong shout out right now to NYC EDC and their new circular design and construction guidelines. And I just sent a link to that in the chat as well for future reference. But this is an amazing body of work, and I think one of the best examples of bid language requiring circularity on construction projects in the U.S. And what they've laid out here are it's a very kind of easy to follow process for NYC EDC projects to bring circularity in at the deconstruction phase of a building, and to maintain certain requirements for circularity through the construction of a project. This is a phenomenal resource. I wish every city in the U.S. would copy and paste this and put this into their own requirements, because it's really, really amazing. But definitely spend some time with that and check that out.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Carly Connor, you want to get on and ask your question and introduce yourself? Great. Hi.
Hi, I'm up in Canada, but kind of representing, I've been both a consultant and a contractor talking about material reuse. And it's really, like, even if I went on the Viability platform that like we can see, of talking with contractors that are like outside of just a municipality, where I can totally see within an organization reusing materials and getting the buy-in and moving stuff around. Like we've had conversations with the city of Toronto on this, but for a greater industry-wide perspective of getting buy-in of people to actually put the materials they have on the platform, and then getting engagement of people to actually use them for like real construction materials, of like trying to see what all of you have really seen, because there's the small residential market, and then there's like the big beast of like giant construction, and they're very different approaches across, every different city of where they've started and found success. But I kind of wanted your thoughts on where you found success in that sort of ecosystem. Because you can create a platform, but if no one uses it, then it's just a platform.
That's, I can jump in if you want a bit. The, that's been the issue with reuse marketplace type exchanges that work between organizations. We worked with NERC from 2012 to 2016 to try to do a reuse marketplace for Vermont, Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware. And NERC put its best efforts towards marketing the system. But in the end, we couldn't get it up and running, enough activity on it to keep people coming back. So marketing is one thing. I think the essential, and I think Daniel and his group have figured this out as well as we have. I think you have to go back to the individual organizations that would feed into a exchange between organizations and work with them. So if I go back to the Calgary Material Exchange, they had a group of a couple of full-time people and 4 or 5 interns from universities and colleges. And they paid site visits to all of their members. And they helped do inventories of all of this stuff. And then they eventually actually began to feed the stuff into the material exchange themselves instead of, so I'm giving away maybe some trade secrets, but that's what our formula would be. They were incredibly successful. They moved a lot of material. They saved a lot of money, but you couldn't just market to the companies. You know, surplus and waste isn't a profit center for a company, especially in construction and demolition. It's a cost center. And up until now, it hasn't been a huge cost center for them. So they can get a dumpster and get rid of it. And that's dump. That's fine, you know, and it's cheap. That's changing. So what has to happen is a program to work with the companies and organizations that would be members of the exchange. And I would suggest hands-on and actively manage the exchange process. We found that we worked with the University of Minnesota on an actively managed Minnesota Material Exchange as opposed to a passively managed exchange. Everybody thinks you can just set an exchange up and it will all of a sudden work. One of our clients said, Recycling Council of British Columbia in days past said, set it and forget it. And we said, no, you can't do that. That works for residential to some extent because there's such a huge need for people to get rid of stuff, but it's not going to work in all circumstances. So what we found was active management, make those work with those organizations that would use it. We now work with them to get active inventory systems. So they, first of all, do you know what you got, where it is, in what warehouse? You know, is there a lock on the warehouse? Do you have a picture of it? Or is it like a lot of organizations, they don't have any clue as to what they have. And it sits in a warehouse and they don't even know if they're being robbed. And so once we work with those organizations to get an inventory, the next step is for us to provide them with options, sustainable materials management options, and a materials exchange is one option for them. But we'll also give them additional options like, do you want to list it on eBay? Do you want to put it on Craigslist? And so on. We think that sometimes our own reuse marketplace is a good option, but we probably offer the option in future of making it easy for them to exchange it rather than waste it or let it sit in storage for another 20 years until it's obsolete.
Okay, great, thank you. And Daniel, do you have additional comments on that topic?
Yeah, no, that was a great summary. You know, I think like of all the spaces that we work in, the commercial building materials reuse market is probably one of the most challenging. But where we have seen success is in scenarios where we have a significant company creating market pull that's pulling materials through the system. And I think we have some companies on here today and some folks on here today that have shown that to be effective. When Turner Construction is saying that they want to hit a certain goal for their projects, like that does create some shifts, and that forces the market to respond. And so I think continuing to have that leadership from really, really big players in this space helps the whole ecosystem kind of grow and scale and develop. But going back to my small rocks and big boulders analogy, there's lots of really great examples and success stories out there of folks that have used reused materials on projects, and they're not all just like these crazy Google spaces where they threw infinite resources at the problem. There's lots of small scale examples of materials being reused in small commercial projects too. So I think looking to those, celebrating those successes, kind of building on those models over time is kind of what gets that larger boulder slowly rolling up the hill.
Okay, great. Now we have a quick question from, I don't know how to pronounce it, Tyciana. Do you have a monthly rate for the New York City reuse marketplace?
So all of our Circular City programs are, it's a free access model for businesses and organizations within that region. The only areas where Reaply gets into paid work is our enterprise level engagements, or engagements that require kind of additional permission settings on building different layers of sharing groups, and our related services. But for any organization in New York or business in New York that wants to jump on Reaply and utilize our New York City marketplace, they're free to do so free of charge.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then Rachel Perlman, do you want to get on and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel. I'm a consultant at ORS. We work with a lot of municipal governments working towards zero waste. Some of them are interested in things like your services. And I was just curious, like what your recommendations are for cities that already have a population that's really active in the exchange, in the informal channels of exchange that are not the city. And like, what's the benefit of your programs? How do we explain that benefit? Especially if the program was open to residents and not just for like internal government surplus.
Do you want me to respond maybe? What I often say is that actually reuse is thriving. So you don't see governments feeling the need to provide used car dealerships or to enable the resale of high-end stereo equipment. So as long as something has a fairly high value, you will see that reuse goes ahead with or without support. And I think the next stage is to try to enable the capture of more stuff, and especially more low value items. We will be launching our new donation platform in Delaware in October of this year. And that might be an option that they might like to look at to expand and increase the number of donations made available to charities and nonprofits in the area.
Daniel,
Does that
you
respond to you?
Yeah, great. Yeah, Daniel, you had any comments?
Yeah, just to build on that too. So, I love buy nothing groups. I love seeing activity on Facebook Marketplace, and I use Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist all the time for my own personal uses. And so I think that activity is great, and I think that activity should absolutely be encouraged across cities. Where we see our programs and our services kind of building on that and enhancing on that is when we talk about what that same activity could look like across businesses and across organizations in that same municipality. And so in a lot of ways, like in areas that do have that strong kind of reuse culture where residents are sharing things across buy nothing groups, those are great places to bring that same kind of thinking to your business. And I don't think businesses are as comfortable using things like Facebook Marketplace as they are using a program like Reaply that's kind of tailor made for them. I'll also say too that programs like what we bring to the table are really great starting points for really creative programming to then build off of. We work with your colleagues, Rachel, on the Next Cycle Michigan program and a few other projects that are taking this foundation of really good information about materials in a region and then building that into economic development program or building that into social entrepreneurship programs. And so I think once we get that really great foundation of information, there's all sorts of fun things that we can do with it, and that's information that you can't get on somebody else's platform. Facebook isn't going to give you their data. Craigslist may not have their data. I don't know, but I've never seen it. So I think that's kind of where I would set that apart and kind of show how that can kind of build on and augment these sort of more organic activities.
Okay, great. So as the moderator and as someone who primarily does lobbying, I'm going to conclude with the last question for you both, although we have very few minutes, so it does be brief answers. What specific policies would you like to see that would help this sort of sector? So not policies that already exist, but new policies would you like to see put in place? James and Norm, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll jump in. I'll get on my bang the drum for my favorite topic. James mentioned that our chief competitor is a landfill, and it is, and it's a cheap dumpster. And I think the policies would be economic ones. I think until we change things to the drivers of a circular economy is money. Every day we vote with our money as to what we will do, whether we will have a circular economy or we won't. And as long as stuff is cheap and buying a new one is cheap and landfilling is cheap and incineration or even waste to energy is cheap, we'll keep doing the same thing. So I would like to see economic policies put in place that raise the price of stuff to incorporate environmental costs and social costs of cheap stuff.
Great, thank you. Daniel, briefly.
Completely agree with that. And yeah, I don't know that this is a space that necessarily needs new novel policies to be developed. I think what we need is scale of the good policies that already exist right now, right? And looking to folks like MIC EDC, looking at City of Boulder, looking at City of San Francisco, places where there's really strong deconstruction policy and ordinances. There's a policy framework that exists out there that has shown to work, and I think we just need to see more and more cities adopting that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. If you all can join me with your reactions on your screen to thank our speakers. This has been a really interesting and deep conversation. And want to let you all know that our next forum will likely be in early December. These are quarterly forums. And Mariani, do you have any last comments for people?
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. The last comment is just to let you all know, and I have put here in the chat, someone asked if we're going to post the presentations after this webinar. And yes, we'll post it on our website, and it will also be sent to you, to all the ones registered through email. So yes, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you
Thanks
to our
very much.
speakers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.